Hi everybody, we are making homemade pizza dough, so let's go ahead and get right into it. I take no credit for this recipe. I will go ahead and link the recipe below. I do my own spin on almost every recipe once I get used to making it. So here you'll see I add my own little touch of garlic powder. I add a little bit more olive oil, and I do add a little bit more salt. So that is one big difference between my recipe and the creator's recipe. I highly recommend using bread flour. I have used both regular flour and bread flour, but bread flour is so worth the purchase when you're making your own homemade pizza dough. It's just delicious, okay? So just do it. I know you might not use this flour often, but just do it. Just do it, okay? Trust me. So here I noticed that my dough was really sticky and it wasn't looking as it usually does. I've made this recipe a few times, had some successes, had some fails, and this particular instance while I was filming, I was like, oh my gosh, I did not add enough flour. I only added 3 cups when it calls for 3.5 to 4 cups. So basically I did some fixing. I added some flour as I went along and mixed it, and I fixed it. So make sure you do add enough flour. With pizza dough, you want to make sure that you knead it for a good amount of time. Because I didn't add enough flour, I wanted to make sure that I had each piece of flour deeply incorporated in it. So I definitely kneaded it longer than usual, and it turned out just fine. But that's just a little tip, don't get lazy with this part. So you want to make sure you get a bowl, put a little bit more olive oil in it, and that is what you're going to use to go ahead and let your dough rise. I noticed, once again, mistakes happen. I was like, you know what, this small little bowl is not going to do me any justice, and I just switched bowls and then covered it with a clean towel. I tried to do this before work and I was like, you know what, this is not gonna work. So I just ate something really quickly, went to work and came back. I put the dough in the refrigerator, covered it. It was totally fine when I got back. So once I got home, I continued cooking the pizza. If anybody has any tips, because I find that my cutting board is just always moving around, so I put a towel underneath to prevent that. But if anybody has any tips, just let me know in the comments, because maybe it's just my cutting board, maybe I need some little sticky things, I don't really know. So now you want to go ahead and flatten your dough. So the one thing you're going to notice, it is sometimes going to shrink up. So you want to grab it and stretch it out. You know, you see in some of those little videos where they just stretch out the dough. Yeah, that's the fun part. Do it. Have fun with it. So then you want to transfer it over to ideally a pizza rack, but I do not own one of those and I did not have one at the time. I don't really make pizza too often, so I just never invested in one, which I probably will one day. So basically I just used the same pan that I already own and I just flipped it upside down. That was something that they mentioned in the recipe. So I just was you know what, this is just what I have and I'm using what I have. The main reason you want to flip it upside down is so that the edges aren't being affected while it's baking. You want the edges to be nice and crispy and a little fluffy on the inside. And so, yeah, definitely flip it upside down. But just be careful when you put it in the oven. While you're making the pizza and prepping it and making sure that it rises, you want to make sure that your oven is preheating the entire time. It says to do it at 500 degrees or as high as your oven goes, but because my apartment is so small and my smoke alarm is so sensitive, I only put it at 425, I believe, or 450, and it is totally fine. So just do what you feel comfortable with. Just expect longer times. As long as it's over 400, I think like it's gonna be totally fine. So I had some leftover dough. One thing about me, I knew I wasn't gonna make a second pizza. That's just like, that one pizza was plenty. So I decided to make some garlic knots. The big difference that I did is I used some salted butter from the stick, and I added some garlic powder and a little bit of minced garlic. I completely dipped the garlic knot in there, and as you can see, the first one's gonna get the most garlic, so you just rub it off and then it'll be totally fine. The garlic knots, you want to put it on 375 for maybe 8 to 10 minutes. And honestly depends on how crispy on the outside you like your garlic knots to be. And then of course you want it to be fluffy in the inside because it's bread-like. So honestly that's up for you and your judgment and your preference. On top I added Italian seasoning. I didn't have any parsley flakes, and there are parsley flakes inside of Italian seasoning. It just has some extra flavors and it was delicious. So you'll notice that it doesn't look as dark, but trust me, the bottom is dark and the top was nice and like fluffy, so that's why I took it out. So it doesn't look like, oh my god, it doesn't look like super brown. It's because it's homemade, and if I cooked it any longer, then like basically my garlic knots would just be like hard and I just throw it at the wall and it'll bounce right off. I decided to go ahead and make some air fried chicken along with my meal. You could definitely spin it into some sauce if you want. I just decided, I was just like too tired and was like, look, I'm ready to eat. And doing that one extra step after like making my pizza dough, I was like, get somebody else to do it, okay? Get somebody else to do it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and make sure you subscribe so you won't miss more content from me. Bye.